acompanyar la mort, no? To accompany death and dying.
Yes.
Because here I think we have a very strong threat to primary care with the units of support to primary care to accompany dying.
Yeah.
Because they are like taking patients out of primary care and they are assuming all the care. They are referred from the hospitals, but also by health primary care professionals that are overwhelmed by the charge of work, and so they leave this like a release.
Yes.
And this is happening at least in Barcelona, as long as I know, and it's beginning to happen also not only with dying, but also with domiciliary people who cannot go out from their homes. They are beginning to be treated by different professionals. The moment that they are not able to go out, then somebody else, you are no longer responsible for them, and not everywhere, but it's beginning. And healthcare managers like that a lot, and so some doctors too, and society. As we have this idea that specialists, everything that is more specialized is better. Then in fact, then when you talk with your patients, they say, "But why are they coming? I don't know. Somebody's coming. What are they going to do?" And you say, "Well, they are going to help you because somebody else has referred them to them." But you are doing that already, you and the nurse. And I don't think, as we are overwhelmed by this charge of work, people lives that like a release. And
Yes. I think the same applies at home, but slightly less so. I think it's another tragedy. I think not to go and see very old people in their homes is to lose a huge part of the joy of practice. The photographs on the walls, how it is, the old men living alone when you stick to the floor. You know that one? The sticky floor? Women on their own don't usually have that stickier floor unless they have a mental health problem. But men on their own, sticky floor. So I think, and again, it's going to see someone's home space fills in so much of the missing biographical leg. And this business of, the old person going, why are they coming? We need to help old people to make people go away. I had this, this is a slightly anti-nurse story, but I'm sure it wouldn't apply. But I had a 96-year-old patient with asthma and heart failure who was, in my view, tortured by the heart failure nurse who was sent by the hospital, who went once a week, took this woman's blood and made her stand on the scales, and every other week would send her to the hospital. And it was just this rolling program of, she was actually very ill. Finally, I managed to ring the junior doctor in the hospital and I said, please don't send her home. The heart failure nurse will get her again. So please send her not home, but to the hospice. And she went to the hospice, and it was her birthday, and the friend she lived with brought in their little dog, and they had champagne with the birthday cake. And she died in her sleep the night afterwards. And this was, in my view, much better than going home to the... So I couldn't get the heart failure nurse to stop going. So I'm asking you to do something I couldn't do. But I think there is an area where we have to actually protect patients from from the burden of being ill again. We make them take too many tablets and we send too many different people around to see them. So that's one aspect, and the care of the dying thing is desperate, because if you make that into I think I have enormous time for palliative care doctors. I think they have a huge amount of expertise, but they need to work with us, because the idea that the dying person is an isolated unit, we're still going to be looking after all those people around them who are going to be bereaved and grieving. And if we're not involved in what happens, then how can we help the people around them? I don't think we can. And in a way, the more complex a death, like a child dying, which is one of the most awful things that you ever are involved in caring, it's even more important, because the grief is so much more. And so I think it's a question of negotiating with the palliative care specialist. We try to use the word partialist nowadays. So they're only partially knowledgeable. We are generally knowledgeable. They're not specially knowledgeable. They're only partially knowledgeable. It's a good line. But I think it needs to be negotiated with the palliative care doctors that actually it should be a mind-line-based community of practice, not passing a package over to. And if the hard-pressed doctors think that they can just let that go, then they're not understanding the benefits of picking up the pieces afterwards, which is made much easier if you were there, if you knew what was going on. When I retired, when you retire, you'll know this. When you retire, it's amazing. People come and tell you stories about things you did that you have no recollection of, which is kind of nice. But the ones that you went when somebody was dying, and these are very powerful moments in people's lives. We tend to forget what our performance looks like from the recipient. So, people told me about when I was hugely pregnant, climbing up to see their baby in a 5th floor flat who they thought was dying. I have no recollection of doing this. I mean, the baby was fine, but people, those sorts of things that happen in the night and that happen around serious illness and death and dying and even birth, these are the things that people really remember. And these are the things that help people to forgive you when you make the inevitable mistake. So it's worth hanging in there in those crucial, hugely emotionally charged moments, because they're kind of an insurance policy, because people know you care enough. And then because we all make mistakes, impossible to get through a career without making a mistake. But people forgive you if they remember previous times when you were clearly trying to do the right thing.